Schnapp, would you like to do the invocation?
Dear gracious and heavenly Father, please watch over us today as we do the business of the nation. Please keep our hearts pure, keep you foremost in our minds. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, roll call.
David Wilkinson.
Here.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.
Here.
Bill England.
Here.
Jack Baker. Joe Bird. Julia Coates. Jody Fishingham.
Here.
Meredith Fraley. Janelle Fulbright. Here. John Marvin.
Aye.
Frankie Hargis.
Present.
China Flory Jordan.
Present.
Lee Keener. Dick Lay.
Here.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
David Thornton. Kara Cowan Watts.
Ahani.
And I guess all of those present do want to be a part of the subcommittee.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11.
Okay, moving on. We're talking about the redistricting of the separate council districts, and Mr. We got David Justice here. Did you kind of want to fill us in on what data you have, or if you have any new results?
Well, I provided a, I hope everybody got it. I provided a report for the Rules Committee meeting. I know that we moved on from that, but did anybody, did you make one? You did get one? It was in there?
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Yes.
so on your report, one of the questions I had was, how are you using the last known good address database? It's not clear to me in the report. That doesn't mean it wasn't written clearly, it just, when I got to reading it.
Well, the last known good address database for a long term there, or a long afternoon. It's a database that IS has been working on to kind of cross-reference addresses to get a last known good address. It is not required by our citizens to come in and update the registration address that they had originally submitted. So as they come in for other services, IS kind of cross-references names with addresses that they submitted to try to get a better idea of what their correct address is. Right now, the last known good address database is only used for mailouts. It is not part of the redistricting process because we were instructed to only use registration data. So it has not been utilized in this at all.
Which I think is appropriate, but I was trying to figure out, you had this great discussion about all our different databases and
Right.
how it all feeds. So the other question I had was, I'm a little bit concerned because we've spent time and resources and money, and I know that there are still some counties that are not complete, but at the end of the day, instead of using geodata and map where folks were, we still did a portion map.
We
And I
did,
didn't know what to do with that.
well, we did that because we couldn't do it for everything, which is kind of the direction we were given previously. If we couldn't do it for all counties, then we shouldn't really be looking at doing it for individual counties. So what we did is try to do a method that was not only accepted previously, but also used the same methodology across the board. Right now, there are 2 counties in particular that cause a lot of problems with doing 911 addressing, and that is Adair County and Nowata County. In Nowata County, we did contract with a company to produce a road data set that would allow 911 addressing, but it's still in the initial phases. We have to kind of decide what we're going to do with this data, and we still have to notify citizens that, hey, you could possibly have a new address, this is what your new address may be, and that's not really our function. We need to try to get with the county commissioners in Nowata County to rely on them to do that, but from my understanding is they're not real interested right now in starting a 911 office. So we're kind of at a standstill. We have a road data set that could be used for 911 in Nowata County, but it's not available to the county just yet. So they haven't updated their addresses.
Okay. But Muskogee and McIntosh are in process enough that you're.
Yes, yeah, Muskogee, McIntosh, we actually have the road data set. Citizens are being notified of what their new addresses are going to be. The same way with, it's kind of in the same stages as Sequoia County. Muskogee County will be done pretty soon, but Adair County, I don't know how long that's going to be. It's not in our hands. EODD out of Muskogee is actually doing Adair County.
Thank you.
Councilman Byrd, would you like to be added part of the subcommittee? That's
Sure.
for redistricting. What's that? Yeah, Mr. Baker. Okay. Councilman Hawson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think you just laid it out, but the way you've approached the maps you produced and sort of what's in your head now for how to go forward is to use the same methodology for all parts of Cherokee Nation. That is to say, I probably will misuse the term, but not using geodata, but using looking at the zip codes, using the land-based method. Is that?
Yes, that's correct, except for those zip codes that cross our jurisdictional boundary, and then we did do the geocoding, the pinpointing of our citizens. We were able to do it for all but one zip code, and that was in Shakota.
We could very easily direct you to forget that game plan and to just use the best method for whatever area. So if you can do geocoding in the middle of the nation, do geocoding. If you can't, don't do it. And I know that runs counter to the instructions you were given before, which was to use the same method. And Mr. Hembry will maybe refresh my memory, but did the court ever say that you had to use the same method? Did they ever weigh in on that particular issue?
Judge Fight did.
District Judge.
Yeah, District Judge Fight. When it was appealed to the Supreme Court, and it's been a long time since I looked at that, they did not come down on a set method by which to do it. They were sort of a nimbleness that you needed to get to 10%, and they were hard and fast on that 10%. But the Supreme Court, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll check, was silent as to the method.
Well, I think, Mr. Justice, just for where I'm sitting, I'd like to see you produce numbers, produce maps that show, even if you just reproduce the 5-district map and showed us the populations, to use geodata to the extent you can, identifying where you can't, because I think the argument can be made that you use the best method you can in a particular area. And it's just unfortunate that we can't do it across the board, but that's where we are in terms of the technology. That's where we are in terms of the resources, and redistricting really can't wait to catch up with that. So I think you use the best methods available. You could do that if we gave you that instruction. Is that
Sure.
correct?
Yes, absolutely. We can look at whatever methodology you would like to look at. I just need instruction on how you want to look at it.
I mean, and Mr. Chairman, if you don't think a motion's appropriate, tell me, but I almost would like to propose a motion that he go back for the next subcommittee meeting and look at the data, even reproduce a 5-district map in which he uses the geodata method everywhere possible. And we'll see how the numbers change, and then we can talk about that. So I guess, just so he can have clear guidance, Mr. Chairman, I will put that in the form of a motion.
Motion on the floor in a second.
Second.
Councilman Fishnaw. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just to clarify that we're still using that, we're set, there's no moving date on the time of the data. We're still on the same data, we're not gonna change that, and we're using registration data. That was part of the problem. Just make sure all minds are clear in the past.
I have a question for Councilman Austin.
I think our instructions to Mr. Justice are pretty limited. I would like him to recreate his work using geodata. Now, that doesn't mean that we might not revisit the idea of what numbers we're using, but I don't want to confuse the issue for Mr. Justice, so I'd just like him to take the same data and use as the same approach last time, but only use geodata. And I yield back to Council Watson.
Thank you. So what I'm saying is, every month, we don't come back and say, take new registration data. it's that same set of data from like, what are we on, November?
11/14 of 2011 was the last snapshot of data.
I
that
make a
received.
motion that that is the registration data we use
From that day.
from that date.
There's a motion on the floor. Here's the discussion. Second, open for discussion. Councilman Hoskins.
I know time is of the essence, but until we see what geodata does to this number, I'm just not comfortable freezing in time from 2011. And Todd, do we run the risk as time passes, do we run the risk of a court saying, look, you're redistricting and the ideal is one man, one vote, but you're using numbers that are from 2011. I mean, do we increase the risk that a court is going to look with some suspicion on our numbers?
Well, first of all, this whole process is within the purview of the council, okay? And, you know, you pick the date, you pick the method. If it's challengeable, it gets challenged, okay? But for the sake of consistency, in running your maps, you know, whether you use, you talking to Siri there?
No,
Okay.
I pressed it a lot,
But you use a consistent date, you know, regardless of the method, but a consistent date. Now, be mindful that the act that you passed with the 5 districts, and that you would, you know, revisit the districting. You put a deadline on that, and that deadline is August of 2012, I believe. July, okay. So, I mean, you're only a few months, we're here April, May, June. Whatever you do in June, it's got to be done by July. So you got 3 months,
Just point of
90 days.
clarification, August the 1st is what.
August 1st?
deadline.
Oh, okay.
But it's still.
It's still very, you know, yeah, you're talking about just a few more extra days on that. For expediency's sake, I don't think we can change a lot of dates. But again, I'm overstepping my bounds here. I'm going to shut up. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the guidance, Mr. Attorney General. I think for the purposes of Mr. Justice's exercise between now and the next month, I'm fine with if he sticks with the same date. And the reason I'm fine is because we're about to hire a contractor to sort of look anew at these numbers. And so we're going to be working on 2 tracks here. We still want the administration to look into this for us, but we're also going to run on a separate track. So I agree, don't confuse the issue, Mr. Justice. In my mind, you would just go back and look at the same time frame you were looking at, but use geocode. We may decide that your date is wrong because we just decided it was wrong.
Sure.
There's a better date. But I don't want to lock us in today for the rest of this process into a date because it's premature to do so. I don't think anyone disagrees that all we want him to do is go back and did what he did last time, only use geocode. That's the only purpose of my motion. So that passed, and there is a motion on the floor, but so I just can't agree with it because it seems to be locking us in time when it's not necessary to do so to continue this exercise.
Can I make one quick comment here? It was my understanding that date, when I requested the data so I could start this process, just happened to correspond with a audit that our IS department had completed on registration data. So it is an audited data set from our information systems department, and it's documented data. So I don't know if that will influence your decision or not, but I wanted to let you know that.
And if I still have the floor, I guess I just appreciate the motion, but I just think it's premature to lock us into that, and I will not be for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Fishnaw.
I've just gotten to the point, you know, there's nothing against you, it was against the previous people before you, where every number you all go out into more is suspect, you know. I remember looking at the last letter, you said, you know, he's at 102 or 107 is what we agreed on by the chief. The next thing I knew, it jumped up another 20,000. So nothing against you. I would like for you, I'm kind of in favor of what Mr. Hoskins says, of getting the most accurate number to begin with.
Sure.
Because if you do not start out with the most accurate number possible, it's going to be skewed exponentially from then on out. Anybody who knows numbers knows that. And I would like you to look at the most accurate numbers and to get with Leela Umbertiski, not go through IS. I do believe in there it says that we are supposed to take registration data. So I don't like it going through registration and then IT or then IS and then coming to you. Because by the time it goes from Leela to here, some numbers have actually done.
Okay,
Okay?
can do that.
Councilman Lake?
Thanks, sir. The numbers that you're gonna work with, let me understand here, maybe between you two. You've worked with the number, and did you call them a proportional daily? Back in, from 2011?
Well, the data that was pulled in November of 2011 was just a snapshot, for lack of a better term, of what the registration data said at that time. We have to have a stop date of when we pull data because the registration database is updated on a daily basis. As people come in and say, I've moved, this is my new address, or new people are entered into the registration data, or into the registration database, the number constantly fluxes.
Okay.
So we have to have a stop date of when we,
I got you.
of when we look at it.
So when you took that picture, at that moment,
Right.
you used that data to develop the 5-district program?
Yes, yes.
And I've heard this term proportional versus geocoded data. Could you kind of run through that with me, and which did you use, or which was used for the 5-district data?
Okay, there was a methodology that was developed previously that we called the proportionate method, for lack of a better term. Basically what we did is we took the smallest geographic area that we could determine where our citizens lived, which was zip codes. Inside of that zip code, we have a problem separating where people actually live. So we looked at it based on a land base, if you will. If a zip code was 60% in County A and 40% in County B, then County A got credit for 60% of the numbers. County B got credit for 40%. That's the proportion method in a nutshell. The geocoding is where we actually pinpoint where a person lives. We enter in their address into a software that we have in our office. It gives us a pinpoint location of where that person actually lives. Now, previously, we were told if we couldn't do it for everything, not to do it, but to make a determination on those zip codes that are partially in and partially out, we really only had that one option of getting a accurate number, if you will, where we pinpointed who actually lived in the jurisdictional area as opposed to who actually lived out of the jurisdictional area. And that's what we did for those zip codes that cross our jurisdictional boundary.
You used the proportional.
We used that pinpointing geocoding method where we pinpointed where they lived, and then we counted how many were actually in those zip codes and how many were out.
And so what are we gonna use this time?
If I could, Councilman, this time, on all those interior areas in particular where you can do geocoding and plot them in particular, you're going to do that as opposed to the zip code. And that way, if
Right.
we were to draw a line and it didn't coincide neatly with the zip code, rather than use the proportionate method, you'd know precisely if you drew it up a river, up a highway, you'd know how many were on this side, how many are on the other.
Right.
The population's so small, and when we go to working within 10%, it doesn't take a whole lot to skew it one way or the other.
Right.
So I would just like to see that map produced, just so I could compare it to what it looks like, and it might inform our debate a bit.
Sure.
And that is going to be that same snapshot of that same date and time?
For the purpose, just for the purpose of this exercise, we'll
exercise.
use the same date. That's what I
Thank you.
understand.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any other discussion? Any other discussion?
I would like to set this committee on its own day earlier in the morning so we can give this some thought instead of throwing it at the end of the day when everybody's tired. This is an important subject.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to freeze the date to 11/14/2011. All in favor, say aye.
Point of clarification, this is the motion is to freeze the date for the rest of our redistricting process, as I
For
understand.
this particular round of redistricting.
For this redistricting of 2012. All right, and if that's the case, I oppose it. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Councilman.
And so we're back to freezing that time frame to November 2011. That's what this, we're getting ready to do.
Freeze it for the entire redistricting
The
process.
entire district.
As opposed to freezing it for the purposes of Mr. Justice's exercise over the course of the next month to give us comparative data,
Which is what you discussed with him before the motion came.
which is what motion has already passed.
Right, okay,
Okay.
I got you, thank you.
Are all minds clear? Okay. Motion to freeze to 11/14/2011 for the entire time until the election. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Roll call.
Meredith Riley? Yes. Chanel Fulbright?
No.
Don Garvin?
Yes.
Frankie Hargis?
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.?
No.
Hannah Blair Jordan?
No.
Lee Keener? Dick Light?
Nope.
Harry Snell?
Nope.
David Thornton? David Walkenstick?
No.
Kara Callan Watts?
Yes.
Buell England?
Yes.
Jack Baker?
Yes.
Joe Byrd?
No.
Julia Coates? Jody Fishenhoff?
No.
We have 5 yes and 9 no.
Motion fails. Is there any other discussion for Mr. Justice? Yes, Councilman Lawson?
This isn't directed to Mr. Justice, but in our Executive Finance Committee meeting, we approved some funds for the purpose of contracting with an expert. And so I'd just like to, Madam Speaker, would you need a direction from this body to do that, or do you have sufficient direction out of the Executive Finance Committee?
On hiring
Hiring the expert?
the contractor?
Yes.
I don't really think I need any further direction. Once our budget mod's in place, then we'll just move forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
So I do have questions about it. Will there be a request for proposal and public bid process? And once they are awarded the bid, will that process be public on how the determinations are made for the redistricting?
I will follow the procurement policies, and this will be my first one, but I'll do my very best.
So we put that on the motion to, she doesn't.
I don't think we need a motion.
No, I'm just
I just
trying to
plan-
clarify
yeah.
for the record so people know what the expectations are.
I would assume we would have to make requests, because I have no idea who this person might be. I know there's people out there that have that expertise, but I don't know any of them.
Thank you.
Any other discussion with the redistricting? Sounds like we need to get our numbers together before we make any decision to start brainstorming on landmarks and what have you for this process. So right now, we're just waiting on that data. So, Madam Speaker, when's the timeline? We're going to get this outside consultant to do this.
Just as quick as I talk to the procurement people and figure out how we're going to.
So I think
We'll have to write a, you have to do a
request for a
little.
proposal.
Mhm.
So you think by next meeting, we may have some data, or?
Well, if you'll give me a couple of weeks, and I don't know, I think that when we did the attorney deal, we did a 10-day deal, didn't we? We should at least do a 10-day deal on this. So I'd say a couple of weeks if I can, I'll actually get with Doug and get Doug to help me write what we need to. I'll get with Doug and our attorney,
Okay.
and they can help me.
Yeah, I'm just talking to Doug.
Okay.
The process or the timing?
Well,
just the timing.
Okay, the time, this is enabled through a modification, or rider to mod 7, so it needs to, actual go out to bid needs to be held until mod 7 is approved before council. For
So,
spending authority. We can get all the documentation ready to go by then.
After April 16th, the next day, we can put it forward.
Yes,
We'll
ma'am.
have it ready and we'll put it forth then. That'll be our plan. That's our timeline.
Okay, so.
They'll approve the budget, or I hope this body will approve the budget model on April 16th. We will have everything ready, have it ready to go out then. And so on the 17th, well, I guess if the chief approves the budget mod, then as soon as he approves it, then we can send it out. So that week, we'll try to get everything sent out.
Alright, so probably May, prior to council meeting in May, we'll probably,
And-
our subcommittee in May, we'll probably have some data, because April 26th is our next meeting.
Well, actually, maybe the end of April, we'll know something more to report, and then we'll need to get in high gear, maybe even on a weekly basis after that. Yeah. We'll get this done.
Well, looks like everyone's ready to go.
Second.
All in favor? All right, next meeting's April 26th, 4:30. Thank you.